So, did you ask your doctor about Ozempic at your last appointment? Maybe a friend lost 30 pounds on it, posting before and after photos that made you wonder if you're missing out. The prescription pad is right there, one signature away from what everyone's calling a miracle drug. But here's what they don't tell you in that 15-minute appointment: your body already makes GLP-1. This powerful hormone naturally controls your appetite, regulates blood sugar, and supports healthy weight without a single injection. The question isn't whether you need expensive medications with unknown long term effects. The question is, why has your body stopped producing enough GLP-1 in the first place? For most women in midlife, it's not a deficiency that requires a prescription. It's an energetic disturbance, chronic stress, hormonal shifts, gut imbalance that's disrupted your body's innate ability to regulate itself. And the solution isn't synthetic drugs that cost $1,000 a month and keep you dependent on a pharmaceutical company. The solution is specific foods and strategies that restore your body's natural GLP-1 production. So stay with me because I'm about to show you exactly which foods boost GLP-1 naturally, why this approach addresses the root cause instead of masking symptoms, and how you can achieve the same metabolic benefits without medication, side effects, or lifetime dependency. And if you're new here, I'm Dr. Gayla Gorman, a licensed acupuncturist, naturopath, and author of What's Your Kryptonite? If you'd like to connect with me, use the QR code on the screen or go to drgayla.com/links. Because on this channel, I'm here to help you reverse the effects of chronic stress so that you can cruise through midlife and beyond symptom free. Before I show you which specific foods restore your body's natural GLP-1 production, you need to understand exactly what GLP-1 does for your metabolism and why declining levels aren't something medications need to fix. Understanding these benefits is what separates you from women who get swept into the pharmaceutical pipeline without realizing their bodies already have everything they need to regulate appetite, blood sugar, and weight naturally. Let's start with what GLP-1 actually does when your body produces it the way it was designed to. GLP-1 is not just a weight loss hormone. It's a master metabolic regulator that your body produces naturally to orchestrate appetite control, insulin function, inflammation reduction, and cardiovascular protection through what scientists call the incretin effect. Your body isn't broken for struggling with weight in midlife. It's brilliant. And GLP-1 is one of its most sophisticated tools for maintaining metabolic balance. For women in midlife facing stubborn weight gain, blood sugar dysregulation, and increased cardiovascular risk, declining GLP-1 activity isn't a pharmaceutical deficiency requiring injections. It's a signal that something in your body's regulatory system needs support. When your nervous system is stuck in survival mode, triggered by hormonal fluctuations, poor sleep, inflammatory foods, emotional stress, past dieting, trauma, or toxic overload, that's quite a cocktail of possibilities, right? Your body interprets weight loss as a threat. Your metabolism struggles, your hunger hormones spike, and your body fights to conserve every calorie. This isn't a disease requiring lifelong medication. It's a protective response that needs to be addressed at its source. Your body intentionally designed natural GLP-1 to break down within 2 minutes via the DPP-4 enzyme because it functions as a meal-specific signaling hormone, not a chronic pharmaceutical state. When GLP-1 functions optimally, it activates satiety centers in your brain, slows gastric emptying to keep you fuller longer, and enhances insulin sensitivity. It reduces systemic inflammation and protects against heart disease and cognitive decline, right? That's a lot of benefit. I can see why people are so excited about potentially just solving the problem with an injection. But if reducing systemic inflammation is critical for restoring your body's natural metabolic function, and it absolutely is for women in midlife, you'll want to know which specific herbs and dietary strategies work best to calm the chronic inflammation driving insulin resistance and weight gain. If you turn to medication, you will just perpetuate this cycle and actually make your body struggle harder to regulate and create homeostasis. If inflammation is one of your concerns, I cover exactly that in another one of my videos. It's titled Top Anti-Inflammatory Diet: Best Herbs for Reducing Inflammation and Easing Arthritis. The link should pop up right here on your screen. And if you miss it, no worries, because I've included it in the description below. So let's get back to why these GLP-1 benefits matter so much when evaluating whether medications are truly necessary. Understanding these benefits reveals why pharmaceutical companies engineered synthetic versions that last 168 hours instead of 2 minutes, but also why restoring your body's natural pulsatile production addresses root causes rather than overriding your body's wisdom with lifetime medication dependency. GLP-1 directly reduces appetite by signaling fullness to your brain and slowing stomach emptying, which decreases spontaneous food intake by up to 12% without willpower or restriction. I will say that as the effects of these GLP-1 medications accumulate, we know that the intake has to be reduced by more than 12% because of the dramatic and fairly quick weight loss that we often see. So, while quieting what's become known as food noise, that constant mental chatter about eating that dominates your thoughts and drives stress related eating, this happens through hypothalamic pathways that medications suppress rather than restore. So, beyond glucose control, GLP-1 reduces chronic low-grade inflammation, a primary driver of insulin resistance in midlife, by inhibiting pro-inflammatory pathways and decreasing cytokine production that disrupts metabolic function. GLP-1 provides cardiovascular protection through multiple mechanisms, including improved lipid profiles, reduced blood pressure, enhanced endothelial function, and decreased plaque formation, while also offering neuroprotective benefits that lower risks of dementia, seizures, and cognitive decline. So now that you understand what GLP-1 actually does for your metabolism, the obvious next question is, what's the best natural alternative to Ozempic? But that question is actually backwards, because Ozempic isn't the solution that needs an alternative. Your body's natural GLP-1 production is the original mechanism, and medications are just synthetic attempts to replicate what you already make. So let me show you what's actually disrupting your natural GLP-1 production and what most people don't know about the hidden costs of trying to bypass root causes with pharmaceutical shortcuts. The pharmaceutical industry has inverted reality. Ozempic isn't the solution that needs a natural alternative. Your body's own GLP-1 production is the original mechanism that medications are attempting to mimic. By engineering hormones that last 168 hours instead of the natural 2 minutes your body designed. Medications like semaglutide attach to albumin proteins to artificially extend what should be a temporary meal signal into a chronic pharmaceutical state that suppresses rather than restores your body's regulatory responses. So, take Oprah, for example. This is a woman with access to the best trainers, nutritionists, and resources money can buy. She was able to lose weight multiple times through lifestyle changes alone. She admitted this herself. The problem wasn't that the methods didn't work. The problem was that the requirements were so extreme she couldn't sustain them. And when she tried to stop GLP-1 medication, she gained 20 pounds back, even while maintaining her diet and exercise routine. This is now being positioned as proof she needs the medication for life. But what if that's not the whole story? The real question isn't what can replace Ozempic, but rather what has disrupted my body's natural GLP-1 production and how do I restore it? For most midlife women, declining GLP-1 stems from chronic stress, fiber deficient guts, gut dysbiosis, and metabolic inflammation. These are all energetic disturbances that injections never address. And to be clear, this isn't about shaming anyone for choosing medication. The desperation is real. The exhaustion after years of struggle is real. But you deserve to know that there's a path that actually addresses why your body is holding on to weight in the first place. The most overlooked consequence is muscle loss because appetite suppression reduces protein intake precisely when your body needs it most to preserve the metabolic engine that determines how easily you maintain weight long term. Additional concerns include severe digestive complications requiring updated anesthesia protocols, increased risk of gallbladder disease, potential kidney problems, especially with dehydration, pancreatitis, severe food aversion, and restrictive eating patterns that can develop during treatment, and reports of emotional flatness where motivation and joy become muted. And perhaps most critically, the long term effects beyond 2 to 3 years of use remain largely unknown. Restoring natural GLP-1 production through specific gut bacteria, prebiotic fibers, and anti inflammatory compounds doesn't just mimic medication effects, it corrects the underlying imbalance while avoiding muscle depletion, metabolic slowdown, and rebound physiology that synthetic hormones create. Some of our most beneficial gut bacterium are depleted by Western diets and stress. This can be reversed to increase the GLP-1 secretion by over 2,000% when properly supported through prebiotic fibers and fermented foods. This demonstrates that medication level GLP-1 response is achievable through gut restoration without the metabolic consequences of chronic pharmaceutical suppression. Prebiotic fibers from resistant starch, beta glucans, and intact grains feed gut bacteria that produce short chain fatty acids, acetate, propionate, butyrate, which directly stimulate intestinal L cells to increase GLP-1, addressing the root cause of deficiency rather than overriding your body's natural signaling with synthetic hormones that create muscle loss and hunger hormone dysregulation. Berberine, along with ginger, cinnamon, fermented green tea, and curcumin, activate bitter receptors and antioxidant pathways that signal GLP-1 release. These work synergistically with fiber and gut health rather than as standalone replacements, supporting your body's natural regulatory systems instead of suppressing them with pharmaceutical intervention. Here's what the clinical data actually shows. A 2022 study published in the Journal of Diabetes, Obesity, and Metabolism examined what happens when people stop semaglutide after 68 weeks of treatment. That's over a year of treatment. It followed participants for a full year after medication withdrawal. Researchers found that participants regained 2/3 of their prior weight loss within 12 months of stopping the medication, despite initially losing an average of 17.3% of their body weight during treatment. Actually, a lot of people who are put on these medications have over 100 pounds to lose and may need to lose far more than less than 20% of their body weight. And so that's kind of interesting that they were on these medications for over a year and they only lost 17.3% of their body weight. So I question the subjects of the study, but the study did reveal that this rebound happens because the body's compensatory biological mechanisms, elevated hunger hormones, reduced metabolic rate from muscle loss during treatment, and disrupted satiety signaling remain dysregulated even after pharmaceutical suppression ends, often for a very long time after the suppression ends. This creates the physiological conditions for rapid fat regain. This aligns with what we see in high profile cases. When the medication stops, the body's original stress response returns, often with a vengeance, because nothing about the underlying problem was actually healed. This explains why restoring your body's natural GLP-1 production addresses the actual problem, while the next critical consequence most people miss is what happens to your muscle tissue during that weight loss period. So you're seeing the pattern. Specific foods that feed the right gut bacteria, create the right short chain fatty acids, and signal your intestinal cells to produce GLP-1 naturally. But there's something I need you to understand before we continue. These foods work, yes, but they work exponentially better when you address what's been sabotaging your body's ability to respond to them in the first place. Here's what ties everything together. Your appetite dysregulation, the gut dysbiosis depleting your beneficial gut bacterium, the inflammation suppressing your GLP-1 receptors, even the muscle loss that makes weight regain inevitable, they all trace back to one underlying driver. And the fastest way to restore your body's natural GLP-1 production isn't just about what you eat. It's about addressing the chronic stress that's been disrupting your metabolic signaling, destroying your beneficial gut bacteria, and keeping you trapped in the cycle you're trying to escape. Let's get back to the foods, because even with stress management, you still need to know exactly what rebuilds that gut environment and restores your natural GLP-1 response. I know I promised you the foods that boost GLP-1 naturally, and I've spent time explaining benefits, medication risks, and gut bacteria mechanisms instead. But here's why that context matters. Without understanding what GLP-1 does, why medications create metabolic consequences, and how gut bacteria produce short chain fatty acids that signal your intestinal cells, you just have another generic eat more fiber list that doesn't actually work because you're missing the strategy behind it. Let me deliver what you came for, the specific foods that restore natural GLP-1 production, and exactly how to combine and time them so your body can regulate appetite and blood sugar the way it was designed to. The foods that restore your body's natural GLP-1 production aren't exotic superfoods or expensive supplements. They're whole, unprocessed ingredients that feed the specific gut bacteria and cellular mechanisms while protecting against the muscle loss, metabolic slowdown, and hunger hormone rebound that medications create. These foods work through precise biological pathways. Soluble fiber ferments in your colon to produce short chain fatty acids that signal L cells to release GLP-1, while polyphenols activate bitter receptors and calcium channels that trigger hormone secretion. What matters isn't just which foods you eat, but understanding that you're not boosting a deficiency, you're restoring the natural communication between your gut microbiome, intestinal cells, and metabolic hormones that chronic stress and processed foods have disrupted. This is what it looks like to work with your body instead of overriding its signals, where medications create chemical appetite suppression that your body fights to reverse once you stop. These foods create physical fullness through stomach volume and fiber bulk that works with your biology rather than against it. This is nutritional restoration that prevents metabolic rebound, not pharmaceutical suppression that guarantees it. When you lower the stress load, heal the inflammation, and give your body the nutritional building blocks it's been missing, the hunger normalizes, the metabolism restores, and the weight releases. Not because you're white knuckling your way through another extreme restriction, but because your body finally feels safe enough to let go. Let's start with high fiber vegetables and resistant starch sources. Vegetables like Brussels sprouts, broccoli, artichokes, asparagus, carrots, and leafy greens like spinach, kale, Swiss chard. These provide soluble fiber that gut bacteria ferment into butyrate and propionate, short chain fatty acids that directly stimulate GLP-1 secretion from intestinal L cells while creating the stomach fullness that sustains appetite control naturally. Resistant starch from cooked, then cooled potatoes and sweet potatoes creates sustained GLP-1 release throughout the day rather than brief spikes. This also increases the actual number of GLP-1 producing cells in your gut. I will say that if you're trying to use this resistant starch idea, you really have to fully cook the potatoes. You can use other grains as well, including rice, and do the same thing. Potatoes tend to be better than rice, though, if we're trying to limit the amount of spike we have in our insulin, which really helps with restoring metabolic function. But you want to actually cool the potatoes, preferably overnight. And then when you reheat them, something happens with the starch content and it transforms, which makes it less of a problem for blood sugar regulation. And this makes them less of a problem for your digestion as well. Next is beta glucan rich whole grains and legumes. Oats, barley, and whole grains like quinoa and brown rice contain beta glucan fiber that significantly increases both L cell population and portal vein GLP-1 levels, meaning more hormone producing cells and higher circulating GLP-1. Legumes, including beans, lentils, split peas, edamame, these provide both resistant starch and fermentable fiber that sustain GLP-1 secretion while simultaneously feeding the beneficial bacteria that amplifies GLP-1 by over 2,000%, while their volume and protein content support fasting fullness without the pharmaceutical intervention. Fermented foods for gut microbiome support are next. These include kimchi, sauerkraut, kefir, tempeh. These all contain probiotics that restore beneficial gut bacteria depleted by the Western diets, directly influencing GLP-1 secretion by improving microbiome diversity and increasing populations of GLP-1 promoting species. These foods work synergistically with prebiotic fibers to create the gut environment where natural GLP-1 production thrives without the digestive complications, severe nausea, vomiting, gastroparesis that medication-induced stomach paralysis can create. The polyphenol-rich foods and bitter compounds are next. This is grapeseed extract, green tea, berries, blueberries and raspberries in particular, citrus fruits, apples and pears. These all contain polyphenols that function to impact the calcium channels in L cells, triggering GLP-1 granule release through entirely different mechanisms than fiber. Bitter compounds from arugula, I love arugula, radicchio, and dark leafy greens activate taste receptors in the gut that signal hormone secretion, explaining why diverse plant intake produces stronger metabolic effects than isolated nutrients or single pathway pharmaceutical approaches. And then there's protein-rich foods for metabolic protection. That's eggs, fish, poultry, and moderate amounts of olive oil stimulate GLP-1 through protein sensing and fat sensing pathways in the small intestine. Research shows that consuming protein before carbohydrates significantly amplifies GLP response. Omega-3 rich foods, salmon, sardines, walnuts, and monounsaturated fats, avocados, olive oil, nuts like almonds and pistachios, these reduce the inflammatory signaling that suppresses GLP-1 receptors in midlife women. Prioritizing protein intake, especially leucine-rich sources like eggs, Greek yogurt, and fish, becomes critical because this amino acid signals your muscles to maintain their mass. preventing the metabolic slowdown that makes weight regain nearly inevitable when you lose muscle along with fat. Your muscles are where glucose gets processed and metabolic rate stays elevated, which is why protecting them determines whether weight loss stays off or comes back faster than before. So, what are some strategic eating patterns for sustaining GLP-1 response? First, consuming vegetables before carbohydrates at meals significantly increases GLP-1 levels 60 minutes post meal in individuals with metabolic dysfunction, while including sources of soluble fiber, resistant starch, and polyphenols at every meal creates sustained rather than sporadic GLP-1 secretion. Emphasizing high volume, low calorie foods like oats, beans, berries, vegetables, lentils, and psyllium husk creates the physical stomach stretch that triggers fullness receptors, allowing your body to feel satisfied through natural mechanisms rather than pharmaceutical hunger suppression that rebounds when you stop. Combining fiber rich foods with fermented foods and adequate protein addresses multiple GLP-1 pathways simultaneously while preventing the muscle loss and metabolic adaptation that causes two-thirds of medication users to regain their weight within a year of stopping. So remember that appointment we talked about where you were asking your doctor about Ozempic because your friend's dramatic weight loss made you wonder if you needed it too? Well, now you understand why that prescription wasn't the answer. Your body wasn't deficient in semaglutide. It was depleted of the gut bacteria, prebiotic fibers, and anti-inflammatory compounds that signal your intestinal cells to produce GLP-1 naturally. The Ozempic your friend is taking, it's engineering a 168-hour version of what your body is designed to do in 2-minute intervals after every meal, creating pharmaceutical dependency instead of restoring the metabolic communication that chronic stress and processed foods disrupted. So now you know exactly which foods restore that natural GLP-1 production, the specific vegetables, whole grains, fermented foods, and polyphenols that feed that beneficial bacteria and trigger short chain fatty acid production in your gut. More importantly, you understand why this approach prevents the muscle loss, metabolic slowdown, and two-thirds weight regain that happens when medications suppress your body's regulatory systems instead of correcting them. Because achieving GLP-1 results naturally isn't about finding an alternative to medication. It's about addressing the root cause of why your body stopped producing adequate GLP-1 in the first place. So the results you create are sustainable, not pharmaceutical. And if your best efforts to live a healthy lifestyle and do all the things you've been led to think are supposed to work aren't getting the job done, you may even be feeling like you take 2 steps forward and 3 back. I have more resources to help you navigate midlife. Just go to drgala.com/links and watch my next video where I show you how to manage the toxic stress that's sabotaging your efforts. You can eliminate the symptoms that seem to be piling up in midlife naturally without medication, crazy diets, intense exercise, or any other unsustainable lifestyle hack.